Howdy, everybody. This is Windy City Thetan Watch. Today we have a great interview with somebody who I just think is an amazing person. He's had an interesting life. I think you're going to be very impressed with what his story was. And then kind of to bring it back around to what our channel is, our guest, David Noll, had an experience with Scientology. We're going to go through a little bit of his history to show you his background. But then what I really want to do is show you how a first generation, or so we hear about the second generations and the never, or the second generations, third generations, people who were born into Scientology. Here's somebody who came across Scientology and kind of his journey through that process as we go through there. So let me do the intro real quick.
Welcome back to a Windy City They Tan Watch, the channel where truth meets freedom, right here in the heart of Chicago. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to stay updated with our latest investigations, interviews, and insights. Your support fuels our fight for freedom and truth. So, let's dive into today's journey, armed with knowledge and the relentless spirit of the Windy City.
All right. Thank you very much. So I'm going to bring a guest on, David Noll. He is a business owner of two businesses out in Las Vegas. He trains dealers in all of the casino table games, as well as they have, I would say, an entertainment space where they teach people how to play these games. And then they also have some corporate elements of that as well. I'll let him a little bit. But without further ado, here comes David Noll.
Hello.
Howdy, David.
How are you? Good.
Excellent. Good to have you on board.
Yes. Great to be here.
Just to let people know, can you let us know what CEG is and
Yes.
what Casino Quest is?
So CEG Dealer School, we are a trade school here in Las Vegas. We train dealers. We will be officially the largest trade school for casino dealers on the planet as of when we move to our new space. What is it? So in about 2 weeks. So that's a little bit of a flex. So if you know where I came from, it's a fantastic place to be because no one ever thought we'd be here. That's CEG Dealer School. So we train dealers. We also own Casino Quest. It's at Fashion Show Mall in the Las Vegas Strip. And that is where we sell gaming supplies, but we also teach people how to play the games. We focus on etiquette, strategy, opportunity, and we host a lot of corporate events. We just did one yesterday, but we do, a lot of big companies, they come to Vegas, they have their conventions here, and they're looking for something to do, create some atmosphere. Not everybody wants to gamble, so it's a non-gambling space. It's an education space. So you come, you learn how to play the games, and hopefully, if you do choose to gamble, you have a little more knowledge, some confidence, and some better opportunity to win. There's no guaranteed wins. We are, as you say, an entertainment space. And so we want people to come and be realistic and be budget-minded, that kind of thing.
Excellent. Thanks. I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I kind of want to go through is I told David before we got here,
Yeah.
he is the most interesting man in the world.
Oh, my God.
And
yeah.
I will say that you and I have a lot in common. I know where Massachusetts is. I've heard of Mexico, and we both have had experiences with the church. And then you've had a couple of other things go on here.
Yes, I've had a very chaos filled life. Let's be sure. Yeah.
So can you kind of start us off? How did life start for young Dave Noll?
Oh, I was look at this. Let me just go through the bullet points you have here. Holy smokes. Well, I did. I started in a very privileged family. I grew up very, I would say upper to like ridiculously upper middle class, not even middle class. My family was fairly wealthy. And there was a kind of a point in time where I hated it. And I felt that it had lots of restraints, offered lots of restraints. I saw my family was not they were not the friendliest people. They created a lot of issues for me as a young person. I was interested in different things, and they were interested. Lots of conflict. Let's say my grandfather was this famous dean of science for this big university, and wanted me to be in books constantly. And My parents and uncle were involved in various businesses, and there was a lot of pressure to be whatever the hell they wanted me to be instead of David being what David wanted to be. So this is one of the reasons, by the way, why I ended up entering the chaos stream or the life of chaos. I looked for ways to kind of get out. It wasn't easy because, of course, money is the big ticket. When you lose the big ticket, what's left? It's just you got your legs and walking, and you're kind of diminished, and so so that's what happened. That was essentially my impetus to going to Mexico. Is that on here? Troubled? Yes.
It is.
Yeah,
So,
I had a. You go ahead.
oh, what we'll see is a little bit. So early on, you've had this
Mhm.
life in, that there was the family chaos that occurred.
Yeah.
You've got a couple of friends that you almost become part of their family, or they become part of your family
Yeah.
in that space. You have a little bit of fun with drugs and some abuses in
Yep.
that space,
Hmm.
and then all of a sudden there's a little fun with the mob.
Yes, I have this little interaction. I wouldn't say little interaction. So because I had money and I had resources, I had a bank account. I was sort of taken advantage of by these individuals that were related. Where they never said they were with the mob, but let's just say they made some threats on me. There was a bunch of money that was lost because, of course, I was underage and not doing things very responsibly at the time, and I could care less, to be honest. And so ultimately, I ended up dropping everything, packing a car, and driving off to Mexico and into Guatemala City. So is that on here?
Yeah, so
I
this is the
crossed
next
around
page
all
kind
of
of thing.
Mexico,
Yes.
and I drove. Literally, I had quite the adventure going through Mexico City. I was chased by a paddy wagon down there for a while, and then I ended up in Acapulco. I was robbed at gunpoint by the local police. I'm getting to the quicker points, right? Is that you want me to stay
Yeah.
focused? I'm a bit of a talking to me. They say is like talking to a butterfly sometimes, but we're gonna try to stay focused for you, sir. Okay. Uh, anyways, I end up down in Guatemala. I have a kind of a life changing experience there. I loved being in Latin America because I found many people there that found a way to be happy with themselves. You know what I mean? Just every day, partying and singing, and they didn't need money. They didn't have money. They found ways to enjoy their family, enjoy each other, and that was a big awakening for me. Ultimately, I came back to the States. I had one final sit down with my adoptive dad and not my stepfather, but ultimately I chose to go into the Army because it was kind of my only exit strategy at the time. And I became an 11 Bravo Charlie 2, a dragon gunner, anti-tank gunner. And I didn't score Top Gun. I didn't. Well, I sort of qualified, but I ended up being an RTO. I did much better at that, and which is a radio telephone operator. For those of you, if you watch the old World War II movies in Vietnam, where they have the radio on their back, that big ass prick, they called it a prick 77 with the tall, long whip and the short whip, and the whip is the antenna. I was that guy. I was sitting next to somebody who was yelling at me various orders, and so I spent my time in the military doing that. And then I got out, and I mean, we jumping around here. Where are we at? What's
Yeah, a
going
little
on?
bit. So
Yeah,
a couple of things. The only thing I know
yeah,
about the guy that's got the radio, he's
yeah.
the first guy that's shot in any battle. That
Oh yeah, for sure. You
you
know
are
what's
the
interesting
target.
is that the dragon gunner position also, because at the time a dragon gun has 1,000 meter down range. It's a wire guided. Nowadays they have a tow that you can launch and like leave. But back in my day, it was a rocket. You know what I mean? So like you fire the rocket and you had a bullseye just literally lining you up. You know what I mean? So like there were tanks that could get off a shot even before. It was a very slow moving rocket as well. So by the time it hit a target, potentially someone could line it up with you and take you out. I went from that, because dragon gunners did not have longevity, to an RTO that had less longevity, especially if you had a long whip or you were in like a jungle environment, that kind of thing. And this
Yeah.
was back when radios were big, like big. My radio, my backpack would start at 100 pounds when I went into the field. I was what they call division net. I had to carry a lot of mobile wire and stuff like this. So but anyway, so ultimately, I got out. I was honorably discharged, and I'm kind of skipping forward. I'm trying to stay
Yeah.
focused. Trying to stay
No,
focused.
you're doing great. Doing great.
I'm
So
doing it right.
then
Yep.
You're doing excellent.
Mhm.
What lands did you leave the military in California, or how did you? Yeah, how did you end
I
up
was
in Southern California?
so I was at Fort Ord, so Monterey, Carmel, and they exited me at the same time as a friend of mine. And my friend was probably the one of the biggest catalysts to me becoming involved in Scientology. So we left together. We were actually purposely synced up. So the caveat of the unfiltered part of the story is we both left. I was going through a debriefing in a psych ward because that's how they did it back in the day. They I had a top secret clearance because I was division net RTO. I had a COI, which is at that time was a encryption decryption book, the best I can explain it. And so you had to be debriefed and understand, everything. And so I meet this guy who was in DLI, Defense Language Institute at the time. And they had a DLI attached to Monterey. So there was a DLI that was like an adjunct thing. Well, if you don't know, which you probably don't, a lot of suicides come out of there. I don't know how else to speak of this, and I'm sorry if, but he was at the time. We became friends, and he was quite, let's just say, quite suicidal. But as a friend, they felt like I was his best chance of getting out alive, and so the military didn't want responsibility, and so I became his, his sort of buddy to leave. Anyways, I had a car, and we drove. The first thing we did was we drove down the PCH, and we went. We drove. Took us a few days, and we went through Santa Cruz. We ended up in Santa Barbara, and he it was not easy. He was having lots of issues, and ultimately there was like a phone call with his mother. Not on the cell phone, by the way, on a payphone. You know what I mean? Back in those days, there was a payphone. We were checked into this very expensive a hotel, and I was supposed to have gotten a job in Santa Cruz working for AT&T of all places, as because I had all this radio experience, and the Army had worked on getting me this transitional job. And when I showed up, I met with this interviewer who saw that I was 11 Bravo. Or, I wasn't just 11 Bravo, and no one is just 11 Bravo, by the way. We all have other duties and lots of skills and things like this. But when you just out of the military, sometimes you don't present yourself well, right? You're not in the civilian, mentality and interviewing. And so I get there, it's 11 Bravo, and he's like, well, I'm just a grunt. And he based the whole interview is just basically, I'm not intelligent enough for this job. And it's a line job. It's a poleman job. It's just climbing poles and setting up antennas. Dude, I had set up field antennas, rhombus arrays in the field for satellite retrans. And this guy's telling me, but of course, I didn't have the wherewithal to tell him that. I just, he was a recruiter. And so I was too stupid for prime time, apparently. And so I didn't have enough money, to be honest, when I exited. We each had about $1,200 was our separation money. And, you can't, even back then, that was not enough to live off of for any length of time. So I got denied this job. I ended up good.
Something I want to kind of let the
Yeah.
audience know. You're not an unintelligent person. So you left high school early, but
Yep.
you absorb. I feel like you learn and absorb very well.
Mm-hmm.
You when you you got your GED in an afternoon and took a
Yep.
couple of other tests
Yeah.
that day. So
Mm-hmm.
you are not by any means an unbright or unintelligent person. And
I
again,
hope
maybe you
not.
don't present well in the interview space, or at that time,
Yeah.
right, you're coming out
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
military.
Mhm.
But that's what throws me, this idea that, wait, why would you give up on a guy who's military and has the skills you want in this
Yeah, it was
space?
crazy, man. It was very. I will tell you, like this friend of mine that I was with, it was a very upsetting period. I cared for him greatly. We had created this great bond. And when I say that keeping him alive was tough, keeping him alive is tough. I'm not going to share the story specifically, but DLI is one of the highest suicide rates for a campus in the country, if you consider it a college campus. He was actually an Air Force DLI, which is the easiest. I won't say the easiest. DLI is tough on its own. You'll have to kind of look that one up and find the statistic. But If you're Air Force, you get to focus on DLI. You know, the people that are Army and in other areas, they have to do their regular service plus DLI, right? But anyways, so keeping him alive was tough, and it was getting very rigorous. So I'm sure, you know, I didn't present well, and that's the thing. Yeah. My story of leaving high school is I was only 2 weeks away from graduating high school. I had skipped 2 grades, by the way. I clept out of one grade and had sort of honored my way out the other grade. But back then, things didn't mean anything. You know, I was young and willing to make mistakes, and I quite honestly was just really focused on getting away from my family. So, but anyway, so I end up in Santa Barbara, and I had this conversation with this guy's mother. And his mother's convinced that he can help her son, and so anyway, so I ended up on my own, and outside that front door was a one of the personality centers. I think they call them different now, but back then they were, you did the personality card, right? And
Right.
so I meet this girl, and or I don't remember. I think it's a girl, but I meet someone, and they had I do a personality test, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're the perfect personality. We've been waiting for you." And of course, I walk in, and they sit me down. I get on the cans. They give you that first little audit, and they tell you all the things you want to hear. Now, I was a couple things. I was broke. I was an L. Ron Hubbard fan. I had never heard of Dianetics. I had only heard of, or I might have actually heard of Dianetics, but I didn't realize that Scientology was a thing. I'd never heard of it before. But I was a Battlefield Earth. I read as much of the series as had been written. I was a huge science fiction fan. So I was a big fan of L. Ron Hubbard. I just didn't know that he was involved in this. I really did not know until I showed up there. And I was like, no way. My favorite author is the head of this. It's got to be good. It's just got to be good. So I'm in
The
Santa
universe
Barbara.
is with me. Everything in the universe is
Yes.
going my way.
Yeah, I should have just come here in the beginning. You know what I mean? And so I go back. I remember having gone back to the room, and then I tried to convince my friend to stay with me, and that wasn't a thing. And quite frankly, well, he should have stayed with me. But anyways, so the very next day he decides to leave. I put him on some bus. And I no longer have my car. I'm not sure what the hell happened to the car. I forget what happened to the car, because this is 33 years ago, 34 years. Some reason it might have been his car. Maybe he took the car. Maybe it was his car. But anyway, so here I am, broke. I've got my 2 duffels from the military. I've got whatever money I have left, and they offer me a job. They're like, hey, we can take you to, our church, give you a ride to LA, throw you in the van. You can work with Sea Org, and everything sounded just so easy, right? This is everything synced up, and that's like the goal of Dianetics is. I mean, Dianetics is kind of a mix, like a mosh of like all these philosophies and self-improvement. I mean, if you break it down, you can find like references to stuff all over. You know what I mean? Like if you're a follower of a lot of these philosophers and stuff like this, he kind of like merged everything in one. You know what I mean? Apart from the prison stuff, that where the Thetan thing. I think that was his stuff. But and that's where your channel, the Thetan, that's pretty good.
100%.
So anyway,
Yeah, one of the things about
yeah.
with that early Dianetics, and you kind of hit it. There weren't many original thoughts in that space. It was a collection of some soft philosophies that existed everywhere.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to go back a little bit to the idea. You come into the personality test, and one of the things people on my channel don't understand, because we do think most of the people that are listening here think it's a cult, and the idea of how in the world could anybody else get involved in that, and that early on it's a very idealistic. My opinion is, and I'm sorry, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but right, there's an engaging element to that. So what drew you in the door?
Well, so they focus on the personality stuff, like the idea that you have all these unlocked potential, right? Like there's all these ways you purify. Purification hadn't started yet. It was going clear. The purification cycle was added right as I was coming in. So they on the back end behind the hospital, we call the hospital, right? they added that purification center, but they didn't have that purification center originally. It was basically like, here's where you need to go clear, and how you unlock all your potential, and you have all these levels, and eventually you can just float around whatever the hell you want. But they don't talk about, you know, the idea of, you know, what is a Thetan? Why are we Thetan? Why are we locked in these bodies? All that cultish stuff. And I didn't even hear about the other planets and the other rulers and all this other weird stuff until much later. And basically they present it as, listen, you get to study. You're gonna be like a modern day monk, and you're gonna work for this, you know, the religious. We're gonna pay you. You're gonna live in our dorms. We're gonna feed you, and you're just gonna participate and learn and grow. They really don't, you know, they're like, hey, are you depressed? Oh my God, we have a cure for depression. You know what I mean? Are you this? Are you that? We have all these fixes. And I'll be honest with you. I know this is going to sound, I really was looking for a ride to LA. And I didn't understand the ramifications of what I was going through. And the fact that I was a big fan of L. Ron Hubbard as a science fiction writer, I just didn't see this as being all that negative until I get there, and a few weeks in, I start realizing it's getting very culty. And then I realized that it's a dangerous cult as well, you know?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
One of the things that I try to explain to people, that they're given this free personality test on the streets of Chicago here, or they'll be given the Dianetics book, come in and look at the Dianetics. And I'm immediately trying to approach those people saying that they're going to get you in there, they're going to give you a personality test, they're going to tell you these small things that are wrong with you, and they're going to just keep on daisy chaining up this process. Buy this book, that'll fix you. Now buy this book, this will fix you.
Yeah.
Take this course, this will fix you.
It's all about money, by the way. And you know what's interesting? Having me on is I was the in crew IC. So that's what I did in income. So I collected all the data from all the class 4 orgs. So those personality centers are called class 4 orgs within the what used to be the hierarchy of Scientology. And the number one issue is solvency. So how do you break even? How do you make enough money to pay all the bills? The best paid people inside, we used to have this AA org, I think it was called. It's across the street from the hospital. It's, you know, where there's a, not OSHA org, it's called the, God, it's been so long. I should have looked these all up. But anyways, there's a few class 4 orgs that are right there that you can meet some of the best salespeople you've ever met in your life. And they're making 6 figures. Back then, they were making 6 figures. They all drove nice cars. They did very well. They could care less. They were specifically not part of Sea Org. They were, I guess, Scientologists in some respect. But they made fantastic sums of money. It's all about money. If you saw the numbers, anytime there was any issue, it had nothing to do with the training itself. It had to do with the money. Do you know how many times you get recycled as what they call Thetan as they level you up within Scientology? The Freewinds, you know, the Freewinds boat, it was a notorious thing. They would just lock you onto this boat and keep selling you courses, even though you paid to participate on this, you know, their yacht, their big boat. You pay, and then you get through, let's say, you know, OT2 or OT3, whatever the case is. They come out with a new version. They come out with they find new ways. They don't want to move you up. So, because back when I was in, you had to have, so they came out with OT8. There was only OT7. In order to release OT8, the whole world had to go clear. And they had just opened a personality, or a testing center in China at the time. And that was the big deal. That was the one of that class 4 org sold like 1 million Dianetic books, according to them. And those are some of the numbers that I get. But those are the things that happened while I was in. Anyways, I'm gonna let you guide, because I'm a butterfly dude. I will be off in all these different tangents, dude.
There's a couple things that I just recalled the idea that when you're in, so you're in early 90s?
Yeah, early 90s, yeah.
So they're not
1990.
tax-free yet. Yeah, they're not tax-free yet. I think 93 they become tax-free. So they're still paying taxes, and revenue generation is hugely important to them at that point in time.
Oh, it's incredible. We used to have these meetings. It was always about revenue. It was about learning. And by the way, if anyone in the meeting introduced this idea of I don't know how to explain it, like courtesy or ethics or anything else, you got audited. You would get audited. So they would use that as a reason to be like, well, you're not a team player, you're not part. You know what I mean? They anytime there was an exception to the narrative, even though they would present it as, okay, we're in this group together, we're trying to have a collaborative type of discussion. But if the discussion did not go the way, and for, do we have, are there Sea Org people in here? Because they use the clay demo stuff. Have you
Yep.
heard of this? Yeah, the way
Yeah,
that
so
they clay demo? Yeah, go ahead.
so we know that. So
Yeah.
there's a large ex-Scientologist in Sea Org, and there are a couple of people in this chat who
Mhm.
are still, we call it under the radar. They can't disclose themselves as such because you know what's going to
Wow.
happen to them
Yeah, it
in that
sucks to be an
situation.
SP, dude. If
Correct.
you're in LA, anyways. Yeah.
Yes. But we do know about these, right? So you've got the audit. And one of the things that is most frightening to most of us never ends is hearing about
Mhm.
how a lot of times the auditors are children, early teens, and you're sitting in what I would say is close to a confession. I know it's not confession in that space,
Mhm.
but the
Mhm.
person that's being audited can say the most perverse things, and the auditor is bound to stay in that room. They cannot, it's no way not to say it's abusive in that particular space. But then there's
Mhm.
when you want to demonstrate that you absorbed what was on the course, you've got the clay tables and the demo kits that
Yeah.
are you get to have to,
Yeah.
analogy wise, tell the auditor what you
Yeah,
picked
there
up
we
from the
go.
course
Clay
now.
demo. Yeah. It's a weird. I don't. I. It's funny because I remember in Sea Org, you would spend the first part of your day. Well, you'd have some part of your day doing the clay demos. And remember, for those of you who are in Sea Org, you had to have a dictionary, right? Because the idea Scientology teaches you that if you come across a word, even the most ridiculously nuanced, like the word "and," like even "and," you would have to open your dictionary and you would have to clay demo the word "the." You know what I'm saying? Like if you came across an instance where you had a word or you were yawning or you showed some fatigue, and it builds up into these ideas where you start clay demo big O things, and then you realize this is how they get you. This is how they break down your brain. You know what I mean? Because you do this visual, you feel it. It's a very sort of kinesthetic type of thing. And oh, did they tell you about the L. Ron Hubbard salute, hip hip hooray to L.
Yeah.
Ron? Yeah, you've heard all that. You had to do that 3 times.
And it has to be with vigor and the same tone, right? The idea that you can't
Yeah,
lower your volume as you go through that. You can't lower your excitement as you go
God
through that
forbid.
process.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, thinking back about it now, it's my one of my business partners was very nervous early on when we started having me talk about. And now I was only in Scientology for about 8 months. It really wasn't the longest time, but obviously it's a very impactful thing. You know what I mean? And you know, it, it's just it's insane. All right, go ahead. What do you got?
No, so just to that
Yeah,
element, the
yeah,
idea that we went through your resume in 4.5 seconds of
yeah.
all of the crazy stuff that you did in your life.
Hmm.
You're held at gunpoint. You also, there was in the Mexican city when you guys were on the hillside and the
Hmm.
villagers had their guns type thing.
Yeah,
So you've been through
yeah,
some pretty stressful situations,
yeah,
and I still remember that I picked up on the idea that Scientology was also one of the things that you had mentioned. So it
yeah,
was that idea that out of all the things that are traumatic in your life, Scientology ranks up there as whether it's something that formed who you are today or not, it was something that you recall at this point. So it was
yeah.
important.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a very transitional stage. You know what's interesting is I feel like there were components of my family that were very greedy, and it was being in Scientology and being this in crew. I see. You know, there are people within Scientology who are very nice. I met a woman who
Yes.
was OT2 who was part of the European when Elron was in like Spain and Madrid, and he had a boat there, and there was a small group of people. And this is where, not, I wouldn't say small group of people. You know, he was evicted from these countries, right? You don't hear about that either. They kicked him out of a whole bunch of countries, of Spain, of which is one of them. But he used to have his boat, and he pretended to be like he had everybody wearing their little sailor outfits, and This woman and her husband became part of Scientology and spent all their money. He was, I don't know what he did exactly, but my understanding, he was like some type of cultural individual, owned like an art studio, this kind of thing. They had lots of resources. They spent all their money becoming OT2s and living on this man's boat. They ended up completely broke and destitute, and the man died, and then his wife, who at this point was in her late 80s, maybe even early 90s. She was in income. She was my assistant. I was in charge of her. You know what I mean? I remember the adoration this woman had for absolutely nothing. She was very, very, very kind, and I was always like, why are you here? Your husband passed away. You're completely destitute. You make $30. I was paid $30 a week as Sea Org. I had a half a Sunday off to wash my clothes, and at the time I smoked, so I had $0 at the end of every week. I had to wash my clothes in this laundromat on Fountain Avenue, where all these Armenians used to go. Because otherwise the alternative to that was not, well, I don't remember what the alternative was not good. But she was really sweet. She was very, I made really interesting friends. And I think, that's also the tough thing is I mean, I remember at first leaving Scientology, what wasn't the easiest thing, to be honest,
Yeah, because one of the things that we always stress in this movement is the idea that we're against Scientology, not against Scientologists. And 98% of them they're salt of the earth. They honestly think they're doing something good for the world. And
yeah, that's very true.
There's some evil people in there, 100%.
No, there's some seriously evil people. Yeah, there's no doubt. And unfortunately, those evil people have the biggest voices and the biggest presence within Scientology. And I mean, really, it's got to be about the money now. There's nothing left, right? Even they even know. Correct. You used to never know where downline was. That was a big secret. So the Watchdog org was the org above us. That was the other Watchdog org. Like we were a Watchdog. We were technically under Watchdog org as income. We managed all the data and we supervised all the data coming into, all the different orgs. But then there was Watchdog. I don't know if there's anybody here that are there people from LA, from the hospital, from the Fountain Church?
There will be people from there. And we also, not in this chat, but we also know about, do you know what Golden Arrow was? So up in Gilman Hot Springs is
was that so they found the downline. I only knew it as downline, where Scientology disappeared and you weren't supposed to know. They'd have a van that would came up. That was the thing that ultimately got me to leave Scientology. That was the thing that I have two parents went downline and left their son, 17 years old, from New Zealand high and dry because, if you don't already know, Scientology doesn't respect the family bond, right? Everyone we're all prisoners in our bodies and we're all Thetans from some other place. And so the fact that you have a kid or a wife or a familial relationship it's only there. You're only there to procreate at this point, right? The connection means nothing. You can disconnect very easily and move on. And two parents, with a kid who is technically, once they went down line, now the kid is literally stranded at 17 years old with no adult supervision and technically is in the country legally, gets deported. He never makes a connection again with his family, as far as I know. I have police that show up at my house. And I mean, just absolutely, that was the final. Well, I had already had the final draw a little bit before that, but that was the thing that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, we hear this story quite a bit. The idea that there is no family unit, the idea that a child is just a human in a small body, or it's a Thetan in a small body.
Yeah.
That there's just some really crackpot ideas there, and we'll say family disconnection is one of those things that even if you're in the org, we know of people who they couldn't communicate with their children, or it goes through a goofy, like a PO box system, if you wanted to communicate with a parent who was upline or downline in that space. So
yeah, so I mean, they didn't have that technology, back then. So there was no cell phones. There was no, it was just game over.
Did you sign the billion-year contract?
I did. I signed it, and the lifelong. It was just like it was a billion years. I don't remember how many years. A lot of years. Yeah, whatever that was. Yeah, you had to go into Sea Org,
Yep.
and I ran into somebody not too long ago who was like, yeah, that's not legal. Yeah, you can't. That's indentured
Correct.
servitude. Yeah,
Yep.
so it's like they have you sign it, but technically, so they I did supposedly at one of the addresses they sent me a bill, because that's one of the first things they do is they send you a bill for all your
Freeloader.
Sea Org. Yeah, yeah, for
Yep.
all of your courses, and it's like million ridiculous. I don't know how much it is, but I never got the bill, but I understand they sent it to me. Um, and of course, that's not a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's also one of those things where it's 100% illegal, but
Yeah.
it's similar to like when you come across a police officer and the police officer tries to tell you something authoritative, and
Hmm.
since you don't know any better, you believe
Hmm.
them. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what's happening, and they give you the freeloader debt, and it's like, well, you owe
Yeah.
us this money, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. You took
you're
our
scared.
courses. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it turns out that's illegal because if it was a job at the end of the day, and that was training for the job, so it's not enforceable to do that. But people don't know that. And the other
Yeah.
side of that is that, okay, fine, don't pay us, but then we will force the disconnection. And the idea of, you had mentioned that human bond. You lost human connection with people
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
bond with, or I don't know what the right term is, but there were people that were significant in your life and members of the church. And once you
Yeah.
leave, you can't be friends anymore. You've lost this
Yeah.
connectivity.
I had this, I actually, I had a couple of friends. I had this girl that I knew we were, I guess, close. It's funny because then I realized that we weren't. It was just the minute I was out, there was no connection. I actually saw her on the street at I don't even know what the hell they used the building for, but it's on Hollywood Boulevard and like, Hollywood and Vine, the other side of Hollywood and Vine. But anyways, that area of town. And she saw me and just walked the other way. It had nothing to do with me. I mean, but she was in her full Sea Org uniform, and so
You'd kind of hit on this earlier, right? That, well, the van rides, which that the
mhm.
idea of why do I have to be hidden in order to be transported around? What were
Yeah.
some of the other, I'll say red flags, but however you want to describe it, what are some of the other things that said, what is going on here?
I think that the classes were crazy. The reconstruction of history, American history, and I mean, it was insanity. First of all, the teachers would bring up like a topic that you would clay demo, and it was just be like this nebulous nonsense, and you would go through and you would do the clay demo, and somehow, how do you clay demo like an idea? You know what I mean? And if you do it, how is it wrong? How are you telling me it's wrong? Why are you doing? You know what I mean? It's whatever the hell I think of it. And I remember there was something to do with World War II because L. Ron had his own opinions like how the world worked and what inspired different events and there was this like one historical thing and I remember arguing the point and I had to get audited. It was the first time I got in trouble and from a clay demo, all I was, to me, it was just having a little debate about a nuanced, historical thing. And I was a bit of a history buff. It had to do something with World War II. I remember, and next thing you know, I show up at work and they're asking me to get audited, and they were notorious sometimes for not necessarily telling you why you were getting audited. It was just a way to be like, hey, we're watching. If you're not towing a line, I'm not sure. I always did well at the audits, dude. I always knew what to say. I would constantly talk out my ass, by the way, which I do just in real life too, right? I'm always David. And you would see somebody and they would, they'd be, working the meter and they'd be communicating and you'd be holding the cans and we call it cans or it's like the audit cans. And it didn't mean anything. The thing went up or down, or, you know what I mean? Like, you could say anything you wanted. Yeah, and it's just like, they could just read it however the hell. Oh my God, you scored really well. We love this communication. And you're really in touch with, whatever. It was just so silly.
Yeah, we do have. So there are people in the community that we know about that are acts at the e-meter and they talk about the cans,
The
and that
e-meter.
if,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you, that most of them knew how to make the needle float, right? Because it's just a
Oh yeah,
resistance capacitor, what's going on there.
yeah.
And they were saying basically the same thing you are. It's hey,
Hmm.
think about surfing on the California Sunday, and
Hmm.
you're
Yeah,
gonna do fine in this situation. And
yeah, yeah,
they know that I just need to get out of this meeting.
yeah.
And there are other people that it didn't click with them, and it
Hmm.
would just cost them fortunes because they couldn't get through these audit sessions.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
again, that idea that they think they're doing something to save the world, right? True
Yeah,
believers.
yeah, true believers really do believe that you have to get to all those OT levels. But they lied because they weren't supposed to release OT 8. When I was in, I don't know who's there to back me up with this, but OT 8 was not to be released until the world. They had set all these, benchmarks to be achieved. And there was one of they were on the wall. I mean, OT 10. I mean, what are they at right now? It's some ridiculous thing, right? Aren't they selling like to
So
12 or something?
eight is all they have.
Oh,
Now
8 is
they
all they have.
claimed so right. L. Ron Hubbard dies in a trailer in the middle of nowhere for
Yeah. He left his
whatever
body.
reasons. And
Yeah.
there was a claim that in his notes was OT 9 and 10. But
Oh, 9 to
those
10.
notes have
Yeah.
been found, and none of it, so there is nothing there. But they still they pre-sell OT 9 and 10.
Yeah, that's right. So there, yeah, but that shouldn't be a thing. There should not be OT8 because the planet's not clear. Supposed to be, the planet was supposed to be clear before they reached OT8, which is obviously not a thing. It's just about money, man. It really is,
100%.
but
And
nothing else.
one of the things that Miscavige was kind of famous for, and there's been two major resets where it
Mhm.
would be, oh, the teaching was flawed. We're going to have
Yeah.
to, you might have gotten up to OT 8 and the teaching was flawed. We're going to send you back and you're going to do it again. And you're going to pay for that whole process
Mhm.
again because they found a better way to teach it or whatever that, co-opted mechanism would be. And
Yeah.
people would just end up having to pay again through that process.
Yeah. You want me to
And
tell you one of the? Go ahead.
no,
Go ahead.
I want you to tell me everything.
Okay, so I just remembered. So if you go down Fountain, for those of you who, so if you end up on Fountain Avenue of Vermont, right, and you see the hospital, and if you're looking at the hospital from literally is it that corner? Is it Vermont? Is that right? Am I getting that right? Fountain of
Yeah, let
Vermont.
me let me go to maps real quick.
I don't know why that
Maybe
sounds.
somebody in the chat knows too.
So, but if you're looking right at the hospital, you'll see on the very beginning there is a couple steps down. There was Income. Now I've driven by there, and it looked like it was closed. They closed that entrance. But across the street is the LA org, and then just at the base of the hospital, I call it the hospital because it looks like a hospital, right?
Yes.
Do you know what that org is called? Does anybody know what that org is called? Because so I would enter in from this one unit. So they used to have a series of doors that would be pin locked, that would be key locked. The old school, like you would have to. It was a numbers like 1 through 9, and each door had its own lock. And the further in you got, the higher level within Scientology. And the L. Ron org and the Watchdog org had got all the way in, and there was a Freewinds office inside. Interior, it was one of the most interior doors that they would have. So if you can imagine, the very outside doors, pretty much anyone can get through the first set of doors. Yeah, and Aola was the one across the street. That was the one that was across the street. LA org, LA org. Okay, so
Is it
that's the
CLO
one that.
Continental? Was it the Continental Logistics
Um,
Office?
no. So it's
Okay.
man, I'm.
But there's a lot of them there.
But
So
anyways, there's
Continental
a lot of
Liaison
them.
Office. Yeah.
But anyway, so what ended up happening while I was there, and so as you go in, get to the interior offices, even Income. I could get through 3 doors. I could get through 3 doors at Income. I can get the first door, by the way, into the lobby was always sealed. You couldn't even get through our first door. You had to be a Sea Org member. I mean, a Sea Org Income member. And then to get through that second door, you had to have some type of assignment within Income. So we had a perception. Then you went inside, and we had computers back then. They were working off these little mini frames. Quite impressive, by the way. For that at that time and age, they had quite some technology in play. And then they had this, anyways, I can get through 3 doors. And the org just beyond us, God, maybe that is American Saint Asho. Yes, I Yes, that's it. That's it. That's it. Because I kept thinking it's OSHA, but it's not OSHA. It's ASHO. That's what it is. It's not OSHA. It's ASHO. See, and I was like, there's no OSHA. That's the occupational thing.
Right.
ASHO is absolutely correct. Okay, so that's the next building. So it's in that main. If you literally go to the hospital past Income and take a left, like that's that org. Well, when I was there, and I could get through 3 doors, and then the fourth door was like El Ron and Watchdog and Free Winds people. You follow? So here's what happens: they're looking for some dude who is either killed somebody, hurt somebody. Someone in Scientology has done something outrageous. Okay, and now that's not what we're told. We're told that the police are coming to take away someone who is very important to Sea Org, and we have to make sure they don't make it through the building. Now, all the doors are keyed. All the doors are pinned in, right? So, by the way, I wish I could find this date because I've talked about this. There's a few of us that were there at the time. We've talked about this, as kind of like a thing. But anyways, so we ended up spreading out. A lot of the Sea Org members were sort of were set into all these pinned doors. We're behind the door. And we were told to push up against the door and make sure that no one made entry beyond the pinned door. And so I got one of the pinned doors inside of OSHA or ASHA, that org. And I'm no one ever came to my door, even knocked for that matter. But the whole time I'm standing there and I'm trying to figure out like why this doesn't make any sense, because if you have police that are coming in, they have a warrant. You know what I mean? How are you not letting the police in? You know what I mean? Like what's here, or who are we protecting? And that was one of the very first times. That was early on in my Income thing that happened. I probably was only there about a month or two. And that was one of the very first times I got to thinking that this was not good. Like this is, you know what I mean? Like I'm standing there. It was for hours, by the way. And apparently they were searching for somebody who obviously they wanted. They had a warrant for his arrest. And, and the way they went about it just seems so illegal. You know what I mean? Like,
By the way, it is illegal.
yeah, it just seems so illegal. So, and I realized like what would happen if someone knocks on the door or comes through the door, or luckily I was 3 doors in, like in the Free Winds where the Free Winds people would be. And everybody was always like, "Oh my God, the Free Winds people! They were the big ones." So if it was Free Winds and L. Ron, the Hubbard org, the author org, the author org. Those are the people you didn't get to see or meet the author org too much, and everyone would whisper because they were still talking to L. Ron. They were still writing his stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
So they were a big secret. But anyways,
And that was the financial. They separated the two orgs because that was the financial element. But you're right. Inner circle is kind of what was going on there. One of my friends here declared, Dave, he has a question. And you might not even know. I don't know what the big flap would have been.
God. Yes. I think so. So yeah, look at that Income, man. I was at Income. Can you imagine? You know what? You're gonna have to remind me. I remember a discussion about this. So the last time I was in that Leah Remini, that forum board, was like I don't know, it's like 15 years ago, right? Is when that started.
Wow. Yep.
So I got invited by a friend of mine, also another SP that doesn't still in LA, has to rent some. It's amazing how much property, what the kind of reach that they have had and still have. I think, especially if you're in that area, you're just like. God, I was just so oblivious to a lot of it. I'll be honest with you. Like, there was so much that was going on around me, and I was just so focused on my own crap. I was very early on. I was trying to figure out how to get the hell out of there. And do you guys know there are these houses that sit behind the hospital, and there was this woman that had an affinity for me. I don't know if I shared the story. And she moved me in.
I do remember this. I do remember
this.
Yes.
Oh God! So
it's good.
Let's just say that I was a young man, and she tried to take advantage of me, and that was it. Then I was literally just homeless right after that. So I didn't stay.
So we would say that was 2D flow. Do you remember 2D, like the dimensions, the 8 dynamics
of the house, or
no? So there were 8 dynamics in
I know.
Scientology. And the first
I
one is
know.
self. The second one is relationships.
Oh,
And
really?
if you were in a relationship that wasn't a marriage, we would call it out 2D or 2D flow. So you were flirting
Oh,
with, or you were you were out.
yeah. No, she was a kind of a very one-sided thing. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah. Yep.
Income stat disappeared. Oh, yeah. Luckily, I was out before then. Wow, really? Did they go down line? I wonder if I wonder who in those people, because income was done, right? Income as sometime after, I'm not sure when, but they eliminated income, right?
Yes. So because of the Operation Snow White, Incom feels like
Crazy.
I'm sorry, OSA to me. So the Office of Special Affairs, which is what's the
Yeah.
Guardian's office turned in. So the Guardian's office were the
Oh,
people that were when L. Ron Hubbard had a new missive that he wanted to disseminate to all of the orgs. They would be
yeah.
sent out with a Guardian, and the Guardians were these high level people that they had the secret key that got in every door. Right.
Yeah, crazy. I remember going by like the office org, and there's like no windows and no doors, and
Right.
everyone's trying to figure out how they get in and out, and it's just so. I years later, I never even went to celebrity org. I was supposed to. We weren't allowed, to really interfere unless you were part of the celebrity org. You weren't allowed to go there. That was off limits. Um, and Bridge Publication had just become a thing back when I was in. That's when they started, printing their own stuff, and and yeah, oh my God, it's so crazy. Yeah, it brings up a lot of memories. I'm sure there's a lot I'm missing. You'd have to put me into some therapy to get it out, I guess.
I would say one of the things when I talk to anybody is I don't want
Mm,
to re-traumatize anybody. And again,
yeah.
I knew that you have an incredibly well-balanced life right now,
Hmm.
and life is grand for you. But
Yeah.
there are people that really struggle to relive this, or you'll hear
Yeah.
about people that it took them years to decompress or deprogram themselves from all of the
Yeah.
just the repetitiveness, and it is a mind control mechanism that they put you through in these spaces. So
Yeah. So 100%, that clay demo thing. I will tell you that I know that's a risk. I can't be hypnotized. And I think that to some degree that might have helped me. For some reason, I just can't be hypnotized because I've tried it for like pain and things like this and gone to sessions. I don't know what influence, but I do know, I'll be honest with you, as much as I'm making light of some of my own, but I do know people who, especially if you have family, or you're a legacy kid, or you're somehow connected, it's a difficult thing. And if you live in an area that's saturated or used to be saturated, your life was very difficult. And they would make your life. I mean, the stories of them following you and tracking you down, and becoming obstructionists in practically everything you do. Those amazingly, they're true. You know what I mean? Like it's literally, and it's meant to drive you crazy. I know people who, where they might just sit outside your house and they'll just follow you around, and for forever. I mean, these people, it's their job to do that, and to intimidate you, and to make your life a living hell. And then you tell people, and they're like, that's crazy. Who would do that? Why would they do that? Yes, they do. It's literally part of it's just part of the process. It's a real shame.
yeah, there's a woman in LA. Her name's Tori Magoo. It's Tori Christman, but she was
Hmm.
OSA, and OSA is again that the snitch. They're the
Yeah.
CIA basically. And when she left,
Yeah.
which is 2003, 2004, she had always
Hmm.
said that like she had frogs in her garden, like ceramic frogs in her garden, and
Yeah.
they'd come by and break a leg. And then they'd come by and break another leg, just to, like you said, that psychological warfare of saying, "Yeah, I
Yep.
know you're there. I can get you anytime I want to." Right?
Yeah. I think Muskovich, is that his name? I think he was the worst thing to
Miscavige,
ever
yeah.
happen. Miscavige, he was the worst thing to happen to Scientology over time. I think.
I think that's a true statement. That there
Yeah.
are people that would still be in if L. Ron
Hmm.
Hubbard was
Yeah.
running it, or if it passed down
Yeah.
that way. But yeah, there's a lot of people that Miscavige really turned them off,
Uh-huh.
and he wasn't really the appointed heir of it. There was,
Hmm.
oh darn it, somebody's going to come in the chat, but there was another person that was supposed to be
Before
the
him.
successor, yeah,
Yeah, the
that was
success of
supposed to be the
Elron.
successor,
But he
and
was on the
and
boat
Mis-
with Elron, right? He was
yeah, so
on the boat with Ron. Yeah.
he was a high
Uh,
level person, and he was in the inner circle. He just
mhm.
wasn't the appointed. here we go. It's the Pat and Annie broker.
Because
We're
they
supposed to
were
be
all on the boat, right? Yeah,
Yep.
that was a thing.
Yeah.
Because everyone that ended up at a high level, like the Freewinds people, although they were all in the boat essentially, right? And
Yeah.
when I
The
say the
closer you were
boat, I mean to Elron.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it is a concentric, right? It's concentric circles to the leadership.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I in this day and age, it would never be a thing. He would have been, if Elron was still alive, doing up to the same things that he did back in Europe. I guarantee you, he would not have survived that. And he wouldn't have survived the Me Too movement. He'd been in jail long before he passed away. You know what I'm saying? He would be going. He would never have survived it. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that his motivations were helping other people. I think his motivations were control and power and manipulation. I think he involved in it was about him satiating whatever sick desires that he had, and he built this entire fictional world and reality to I quite frankly don't think he believed it. I as much as I mean, it's just like his level of being enamored with the U.S. Navy, or just the Navy in general, just the kind of like
Right.
the terminologies, the phrases, the uniform. It's also silly if you think about it. If you take a step back and look at it, it's just absurd. I mean, he was a fanboy of the Navy, and he used it as a means to kind of fulfill whatever other weird crap that he had in his head. You know what I'm saying? And this, we it's funny because my team, we have these like philosophical discussions on where we are in the world today, and the kind of success that we've had. And we people are motivated by money and sex, money and it all comes down to greed. If you look at a lot of religions and how people go about the world, and instead, if you spend more time focused on the family, the things that really matter. I don't know how old I'm 55 years old, right? And every year I get older, I realize it's more and more about people, because you leave behind the things that I can't run that fast anymore. I'm not nearly as attractive as I used to be. I'm not nearly as physical. All the things that you measure with success, it falls away, and now it's just about the memories and the experiences. You know what I mean? Like I never used to think about my legacy. I didn't think so much about even what I mean, like what but now as I move forward, that's all I care about, right?
Yep.
And the focus on that leads kind of enamors of sort of everything else. But then you have Elrons that get in the middle of it, and we have a lot of that in this world, dude. You know what I'm saying? There's
Right.
every
This
day.
is not the only cult. This is not the only cult that's out there.
There's a lot of cults. There's a lot of people that pursue power that are willing to give it all away and treat people differently, so that they can fulfill whatever it is that they need. Instead of instead of the we, it's the I.
Here's a question, and we didn't really answer this. We answered how you exited, but were there things that you found appealing while you were inside?
I did. When I was in Scientology, I felt that I was a flawed individual, and I have a very good mind for business, and but a lot of times when I'll sit around talking philosophy, I leave that up to, like, I don't know if Dennis and other people that are around me have these more sort of higher functioning philosophical conversations, right? And it's always intrigued me how much they get from it, how much they can read a book and learn about themselves. And I felt like I missed that as a kid. I didn't have a mentor. I really didn't have a lot of male figures, or really any figures in my life as a young person. I had my story. I had science fiction. I didn't just have L. Ron. I had Isaac Asimov and Heinlein and
Clark.
and these, you know what I mean? These are the things that influenced me, and it was being presented this sort of other reality was I guess cool. Like, it was cool in a way, and I thought maybe there was a path to where I could help myself, free myself from a lot of these issues I had. Maybe be a better person or learn. I was poor, really poor. I was on the verge of being homeless, so that was one of the other things that kept me in. But I really did feel like there was something to this Dianetics, and I at the time I don't think I was smart enough to see out right away. I had to go through all this other sort of emotional trauma to where I finally saw that the only way out was just to leave. I was scared to leave at first. I'll be honest with you.
No doubt. And I know a lot of people.
20.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 1990, 20 years old.
So I was actually, so yeah. Mhm.
There are a lot of people, the exes, that they had to plan
Oh my
to
God.
get out,
Yeah.
right? That the idea that,
Yeah.
because they had to, Natalie, there's a person who does kind of recaps of all the protest movements go on every morning. And she's very proud of the fact that she got all three of her she got three generations of her family out at the same time, which is really unheard of because it's such a snitch culture that husbands and wives don't even tell one another that they want to leave because they're afraid they're
Yeah.
going to get turned into audit.
Well, the only money I had was Sea Org money, $30 a week. I had zero money. I had no money. I ended up homeless, like was legitimately homeless. I moved in with these I moved in with these people that were Git. I don't know if you guys, there was a studio on Hollywood Boulevard. It was like a school called GIT, where people learn how to do guitar, stuff like this. And so I moved in with this band, this wannabe band, and it was a worse scenario than what, and then I moved to Orange County, and that's where I ended up with the bike. And I was, there was no cell phones. There was no way to look stuff up. I didn't know where to go, what to do. And I literally just ended up with my rucks, walking, just, trying to find a path. But that was originally, that was the scariest part for me.
Right.
But yeah.
It's starting over again, right? That idea that on the inside, you had you had three squares in a bed, right? That and they weren't
it was
exactly
just
squares.
stuff
They
in the
were,
bed, but yeah, but I actually worked as my side job was dishwasher. I loved it. I tell people to this day, I know it sounds weird, but so if you guys were, so, Sea Org used to all eat together. You guys remember that oatmeal and honey? God, I used to load up. They had a lot of oatmeal, a lot of honey and bread, and it was just the same crap every day. By the way, it wasn't the worst food. I mean, but it was the cheapest food I'm sure they could find. And they had eggs that I don't know whether they were real eggs or not real eggs. But then some of us would go and clean and do stuff. I would always beeline it to the dishwasher because it was like it would get so hot. It felt like being on a little vacation. It was its own little thing. And then they had all the racks, and I would just do that. I loved it. It was a great way to get away, and I'd run that dishwasher like nobody's business. Yeah.
Yeah, that is one of those things that no matter what your job is anywhere in Scientology, do it well, right? That's kind of
Yeah,
their
100%.
mantra of
Yeah.
ship shape and all of
And
all of
end
that.
cycle, end cycle. I still do that today. See, I still have that. Yeah, I tell people end cycle. You got to end cycle. I used to hear that a lot. You got to finish one task at a time. You got to finish end cycle. Yeah.
Was comm cycle something that you would have been aware of, like entering in a comm cycle with someone?
Yeah, no. There's a lot of this stuff I quite frankly amazingly I kept to myself. It was so great. I used to live in those Franklin, I used to have to walk by, I know the neighborhood has changed, but I used to walk quite a ways down the street to that one building. There's a building, you'll see it to this day because I saw it not a couple of years ago when I went back. And it looks like this mini state house in the middle of Franklin and this neighborhood. And there's like these cascading stairs that come out, which is where I lived, in a 3 high cots. They were 3 high. They were just stacked up in there in the hall. You didn't know whether there's a hall or a room but here's the thing. I'm very outgoing, extroverted in some ways. And so I made friends of everybody on that street. I met some of the Armenian families. And so there were nights when I would go home and they would invite me over and we'd have coffee and they would feed me. And I had a reason not to be in these other, little cliques and groups of people. You follow? Like I actually, even though I was with Sea Org, I had found a way to kind of have my own little space, away with all these other people. And In fact, a year later, one of them, or a while later, one of them helped me get a job. But it's all Armenians living down that street. Yes, also I
Nice.
actually learned to speak a little Armenian, and it was
That's
so that part of it was wonderful. That whole community back there, and drinking the coffee and the cakes, and it was just you know what I mean. So I wasn't so absorbed by all of it as some people were.
Yeah, you escaped something that what I'll say most people talk about is uh, they try to strip your individuality and make you feel that you're part of that group right away.
Yeah,
And because of your extroversion,
yeah,
you somehow sidestep that element where you
yeah,
had relationships inside, and when I say
yeah.
acquaintances, however you want to say it, inside and outside of it.
Hmm.
And I would say that thank your lucky stars almost in that process that you still had people outside the church
Hmm.
that you could talk to in a reasonable fashion in that space.
Yeah, they there was an income. I don't know if anybody was, so there was an album that came out by Sade at the time. I know this is kind of weird, but this is what I remember. I don't know if you guys remember the artist. And so they, one of the groups, one of my so the some of the people I work with, they stayed late, and they experienced this album of music together. And that was one of the weird that used to play constantly in the background. We get so tired of it. But you're very right. Me not being around, what's strange is years later, this has always been the way for me. Even in gaming, in my gaming career, I've always sort of kept to myself. I had my own other life. I don't let any one thing kind of, consume me too much. You know what I mean?
Nice. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. We've had you for an hour. I really appreciate the time that you've had
Uh,
here. Is there anything that we've missed in this story that you'd like to share with us?
um, what have we missed? I mean, my thing is, the one thing that Scientology helped me to understand is not to accept, belief systems. Like, there's so much, I see myself as starting out as a veteran, right? And the beginning of my life as a kid, it's one thing, but a homeless veteran with $0, right? And I never felt all that empowered as I grew up. I've been in gaming now for 30 something years. Okay, so I've been involved in the casino business. I've built my businesses, and so a lot has evolved in this in the short period of time now. But it's a lot of people, they don't even know what they believe. Like they believe things because someone tells them or someone communicates. My thing is, you should always research. You should sit yourself down and find the truth. You know what I mean? Whatever that is. I mean, I'm not here to tell anybody what the truth is, but the idea that you spend a minute, you don't get lazy about your own belief system, because when you are lazy and you let other people come up with your belief system, that's where we fall into these other realities. And what's strange is the more
100%.
people, I come across very powerful people now, and it's amazing how good they are at sheer manipulation for their own designs. And a lot of people think they're so smart, or they're not always so smart, and then they're not always so much out to help you. They're out to help themselves. And many people are just enamored by, they have a big presence, they have lots of charisma, they talk a great game. But ultimately, I feel like, with Scientology especially, I taught myself not to just take everything at face value. You tell me something, that's great. I'm gonna go home and look it up. I'm not gonna take you for your word. I'm not gonna especially if it's important to me. I'm not gonna clay demo, and I'm not gonna get on some cans. I'm gonna come up with my own truth. And even now, like, with media, with the different things, we get stories in multiple sides. I want to find my own truth. I want to find my own definitions, my own belief systems. And Scientology was played a role in breaking me out of that, coming to realize, how quickly I'm, you know what I mean? Like, holy crap, if I hadn't gone through the David, my friend David, and him being abandoned, I mean, who knows? If that hadn't been molested by that lady, I might still be
Right.
a member of Sierra. Who knows? You know what I mean? But there you
Yeah.
go.
Well, I'm definitely glad you're out. And I'll say we had mentioned something earlier, this idea that
Mm.
um, you have found that the more benevolent or gracious you are to others, the more you give away, it comes back to you. And whether that's karma or however, however the universe works in that way, you're just somebody who I think you give everybody opportunities. When I think about the story of the school, I do think that you're there to help these people get a leg up in the world, and the casino
Yeah.
business is such an easy. Sorry, I'm going to say that it's an achievable step that you're educating people that want to get a step up into that space.
Yeah, man, you have no idea. We've given away so much money and so many contracts for the sake of us preserving like the right path. And many times we thought that I gave up a contract that would have paid us at this point probably $250,000. We ended it in a day over someone who was, let's just say, a little bit racist, which a little bit racist is all the racist you need. You know what I mean?
Correct.
And you know, we had a decision to make. Are we going to let this slide, or are we going to, you know, choke the money? You know what I mean? Like, was it money, or was it ourselves? And so we chose ourselves, and we moved past the money. And you know, don't think that I haven't, like, you know, been like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like, you just can't not do that, especially when you're coming out of COVID and you have no money and you're bouncing checks. You know what I'm saying? But in
Yeah.
the end, it's better. It's all a moment in time, and you know, you survive, and now look, you know what I mean. Now we're, you know, it's full circle. But it's very true. It's not so much. I don't think the law of generosity. Some people talk about that, but I think it's just truth. You stick with the truth and the things that matter, and you surround yourself with that. You do right, and then, you know, the rest of it just comes. You know what I mean?
Agreed. Agreed. And I do like the idea of that. If you hear something, get a second, a third opinion. The internet
Yeah.
exists. There's 1,000 ways that you can validate any information that you're getting. Right.
Yeah, no, that's
Spaces.
very true. The internet can be scary too, by the way. So make
Correct.
sure you check, you know, check your references when you go online.
The internet has clowns like us on it right now. So,
This is true. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
all right.
Good stuff.
I really appreciate the time spent with us. I was looking forward to this because, again, we hear so much about the people that are born into it, but you know, how does a church or a cult appeal to people, and then how do you get to this space? So, all right,
Thank you, sir.
I'm gonna let if you can stick around for just 1 minute.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
sure.
let the rest of the group go. Howdy, folks. Fuzzy Pink, thank you very much. We've got the room raid. We're going to go head over to L. Ron Liar. And by the way, we have all kinds of fun names in this community.
Fantastic.
We're going to do a room raid there. And I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you so much. And like and subscribe. Head over to Casino Quest and CEG Dealer School if you get a chance to. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thank you. Bye.